Hi, this is Mark Jones, and in this webcast I'm going to show you how Phantom and ES, so Splunk Enterprise Security, integrate with each other and can communicate with each other to improve the incident response process. Okay, so before I demonstrate this live, I'll first just show you conceptually what we're going to see. So on the left we've got Splunk Enterprise Security, so our SIEM technology, which is performing the detections. It will then pass through those detections in the form of notable events to Phantom, Splunk SOAR technology, to perform orchestration and automation across different types of technology. So we use applications to perform this. So there are applications or sort of plug-in apps that are available for Splunk Enterprise Security to communicate with Phantom, and Phantom to communicate back with Splunk Enterprise Security. And we also have apps for third-party products, such as those on the right there, so Cisco, FireEye, and ServiceNow. The purpose of these apps is to abstract actions away from the actual mechanics or the APIs that those technologies use. So, for example, if you're talking to a Cisco proxy one day to block an IP address, then the playbook would just say we're blocking an IP, and it would use the app to translate that action into the actual API call necessary to block the IP on a Cisco device. However, if we switch to a completely different vendor, then we would still have block IP as an action. It's just that the app that we'd be using would be for that specific vendor, and that would be delivering the API necessary to perform that action again. So as you can imagine, the playbook will stay relatively static. It's just that the app behind it might change every now and again as we change technology. And as well as orchestrating across these various different security controls, we're also obviously providing the ability to automate through use of these playbooks in Phantom. So, but whether that's based on conditions such as those described here, or it could be a combination of automation and orchestration across various different technologies in combination with some human interaction that Phantom provides. So you can either choose to use a separate incident management technology, or Phantom has one that's already built in through case management. This provides you with the ability to define templates for processes that need to be followed should human interaction need to take place. And then the apps that sit on Splunk's technologies that facilitate bilateral communication. We have a Phantom app that sits on Splunk to allow us to send data to Phantom and to run Phantom playbooks. And then conversely, there is an app that sits on the Splunk Phantom technology that allows communication back to allow for updating of notable events in Splunk Enterprise Security, to search Splunk for additional data. Maybe that's for enrichment information that Phantom requires to enrich an event, and to post data back into the Splunk Enterprise Security notables as well. So we'll see that in the demo. On the topic of the demo, so you'll see this demonstration has both components, of course, so Splunk Enterprise Security and Splunk Phantom. I'm going to kind of trigger our fictitious attack through accessing a couple of links on the ES host itself. So it's a little bit contrived, but hopefully it shows the point. So we've got a couple of links which don't point to anything in particular. So as a result of triggering those two links, we'll get a 404 not found. But this is our pretend attack. The first link is just a simple link, and then the second one I'll embed some parameters as well. That will then result in Splunk Enterprise Security triggering a playbook on Phantom, and we'll see the playbook execute and perform enrichment based on the source IP address of the host that triggered that made the client call for that particular link. We'll also analyze the link that got sent across? Is it simple, or does it contain embedded parameters? And if it contains embedded parameters, do they have anything bad embedded in them? If they do, then we'll escalate through to case management. So that piece that I talked about before, where we involve human beings with a predefined process, and also the feedback loop into ES. So being able to feedback results into the notable events in enterprise security. So show the results, for example, from running automation across other third-party controls, such as FireEye or ServiceNow. Perhaps, involved in raising a ticket into ServiceNow for investigation through that process as well. So we can do all of that, and I'll demonstrate quite a lot of that in the demo now. Okay, so here we are in Splunk Enterprise Security, so this leftmost tab. At the moment, in the last 15 minutes, we haven't received any events that have been raised as notables. So that's what I'll be doing by visiting those two links that I described before. There are bookmarks here to both of those links, which I'll click on in a second. So each of those links will then trigger a playbook in Phantom. So this is the generic playbook that will execute. As you can see, it collects some data around the IP that made the call, and then takes a decision, and that decision is based on whether parameters were included with the link. If parameters were included, it follows these two lower pathways. So looks through the parameters and then adds them to the event, and then promotes the event to a case in Phantom. If there weren't any parameters attached to the link, then we will follow this upper pathway where we look at the data and then we pass it back through to Splunk and close the event. So there's two pathways essentially. One, is it a simple link, in which case just close the event as benign. Otherwise, extract the parameters that were provided and then promote it to a case for further investigation manually by our SOC analyst. Obviously, this is a somewhat contrived example, but it sort of serves the purpose to show how this all hangs together. Also, you may notice there's a playbook right at the beginning here, where we acknowledge Splunk Enterprise Security. So what we're doing is actually acknowledging receipt of the notable event. So the purpose of that, there's a couple of reasons for that. One is to send that acknowledgement. The other is to tie the event together. So there's something called the event ID, and that's essentially what this playbook does. This is the actual playbook that does that acknowledgement. I'm not going to go through this in any great detail, but suffice to say, at the end of processing this, we have sent an acknowledgement back to Splunk to say that Phantom has received the event, and we've also identified something called the event ID, which is the unique identifier that is used to address any notable event. Okay, so we've looked at the playbooks. Here's the analyst queue on Phantom. So right now, again, nothing has shown up. I'm going to trigger the first event by hitting this bad link. And as you'll see, we get a 404 not found at the top here, which is what we would expect. So now what we're waiting for is for that event to be recognized by Splunk Enterprise Security, and then for it to appear in the analyst queue here in Phantom. So we'll look at the enterprise security, and in a second, there's a bit of processing that takes place first. So we may be using data model acceleration. So we may be using an accelerated data model to search our data. So there's some potential delay in the data coming through from that data model acceleration process. And then obviously correlation searches typically are not run in real time. This one, just for the purpose of this demo, runs once every minute. So what is happening there is that will then trigger the notable event. Okay, so let's just see when that comes through. Okay, so you can see the event has come through. It's got an urgency of medium, its status is new, and it's unassigned. If we go and have a look in Phantom, you'll see that it came through a few seconds ago. I can click into that and we can see the activity that's taking place. So you can see there's a couple of components here. One is the respond to suspect link playbook, which is then called this acknowledge Splunk ES event. We can see that it's performed a number of activities, including sending the acknowledgement back. It's also sent something called a container link. That's the link back to this particular Phantom event. And then you can also see, because this was a simple URL that was sent across, you can see that the status has been updated to closed, and the event itself was reassigned to the administrative user. You can also see that we've added notes. So if we go and click on the notes, you can see that we have identified that it's been automatically closed by Phantom, and there's a whole bunch of data that we collected as part of executing this playbook here. So here's that data represented in a note. If we look at the artifact, so we can see that we get a single artifact, which is essentially the notable event that came over from enterprise security. So we can see things like the source IP address. We can see the URL that was the URL domain that was visited, and the URL pathway that was visited. And we can also see some additional internal information, including that event ID that I talked about. So this is what that essentially what that other playbook did, which is to identify this event ID. Now, if we go back into the incident, and if I resubmit the search, you can see that this event has now been closed. Its urgency has been changed to just informational because the playbook has determined it to be benign. The owner was changed to administrator. And we can also see data that has come from detecting the event. We can see the history. So that history of the auto close. If we go back, we can also see that it was received by Phantom. Here's the actual container in the history, which we can, if we want to, highlight and then open using the browser contextual menu. Or we can go here, there's a Phantom container field, which has also been automatically populated, and we can open the Phantom container that way as well. So there's a little bit of customization there to make that happen, but as you can see, it has reopened that. So the linkage is present between enterprise security and Phantom. Okay, so the other thing that we want to do is to send the next link, which contains a parameter. So we'll do the same thing as before, just close off some of this investigation. So we'll go back to the summary. So we should see the second notable come through to Phantom. So this is the original one with the simple link. Next we'll have the one with the link that includes the parameters attached to the link. So I'll go and look out for that. So again, this is the first one that we detected. We'll just now wait for the second one to appear. All right, here is the second detection. Again, medium, new, and unassigned. We can also see that it's been sent to Phantom in the history, and here it is in Phantom. So again, received a few seconds ago. We can click into that. So the same sort of process. We are acknowledging back to Splunk the fact that we've received this notable event. We're also retrieving that event ID, so there's a reason why we do that, but essentially we're just making sure that we can tie back successfully to the event. And we've sent the container link. Now, for this one, you can see that all of a sudden it's gone into a workbook process. So this is that case management that I talked about earlier. Essentially, what a case is a predefined sequence of activities. In this case, there are two sets of activity. One is associated with investigation, of which there is a single task, which is to investigate the breach. And then another phase or stage is remediation. So what do we do after we've completed an investigation? Of course, this is entirely configurable by the administrator to determine what this workflow looks like. In this case, again, it's a little bit contrived. So if I go into the first task, you'll see that it's been assigned to the administrator. You can assign it to groups of users as well. If I click Start Task, I can identify the description. In this case, I really provided just a couple of playbooks to run and then review the results. The reality is you would probably just run these playbooks as part of the automation. But again, for the sake of this demonstration, I just wanted to show that you could do that. This task is made up of a couple of playbook automations. So additional IP intel, just run these together. And then we can go and have a look at the activity. So you can see them they've both executed. So additional IP intel is basically just running a whois, which delivers the outcome of, this is essentially my ISP's details. And then investigate URL parameters. If we go and look at this, there's a little bit more work that's done as part of this particular playbook, which culminates in a file reputation being run against VirusTotal, and we can see that there are 59 detections. And if I open up the JSON results that's associated with this detection, we can see there's 66 scans that have taken place. I just opened the first one up. You can see that it's detected the iCar test virus. Okay, so now that we've completed that task, what we may want to do then is mark it as complete and then move on to the remediation stage. That is essentially just closing the actual event. So now, based on the investigation, so here's the description, close the incident using one of the two playbooks. So we can either close it saying that it was no threat, or close and say that the threat has been mitigated. So we'll use the second one. So notice at the top here, we've still got things like, we've still got the urgency and fields and other metric fields. So if I just click on close threat mitigated, you'll see and then we'll just click back and we will see that the case, remember this was raised as a case, sensitivity has been set to stay at red. The status has been set to closed now in Phantom. And again, if we go back into enterprise security and open this up, you can see the urgency has been set to high now. Its status has been closed because we just closed it. And the owner is set to administrator. And again, we have history here. So we see that when it was closed and closed, the threat was mitigated. We can also see that it was opened for SOC investigation. And if we want to go and look at the actual Phantom container itself and what we did, we can go and open the container from this menu item as well. And this will show us the various bits of information. So in this case, we'll see we've got the data in the artifact from the notable, and in addition, we can see that the URL data that we received from running that additional playbook, it shows us the request that was extracted. So with a parameter. So this is the parameter that was extracted from the URL. So you see the URL a little bit further down here. Here's the URL. There's the parameter. So what we did was essentially extract that parameter from the URL and created a new artifact for further investigation. Okay, that concludes the demonstration of how Splunk Phantom and Splunk Enterprise Security are able to integrate with each other and share results across those technologies. If you do have any other questions or comments, please feel free to contact me at splunkcast.resimplify.net. Thank you.